Yeah.
I'm here.
You are, and what you all need to know about Dr. Stacie Graham is that she is always on time. Being on time is late in her book. So we needed to, do it in this way for her today. So we needed to be not just on time, but early. Hey, everybody, Crab Yoga, Allie, D, Joey, Ink and Flow. Hi, welcome. Come on in. Karen, Yvonne, Charlotte. Hi, Karen. Oh, thank you for coming. Be with love. Yes, family. Francesca. Welcome, Anna. Love to see all of you coming in to come be with us today. Yes, so we'll start. Let everyone get in. Darvina, love you. Charlie, oh my goodness. So I have like more than one phone happening right now.
I was like, are you
sorry?
I
can't talk right now. I'm live. Hey, Rachel, I'm good, my love. Kill me, maybe. Nice to see you joined us, Claire. Cat, love. Oh, so nice to see you all coming in. Thank you and joining us for this really, really, I would say, really important and timely conversation for the times that we're in. Maz, I love you. My Psycho London family. Oh, thank you for coming. Oh, all of you. Therapy Yoga. Thank you, sis, for joining us today. Nat, you're here. Okay, my love. So what we're going to do now is switch off the comments, and you know that there's space for you to send your questions, and I think there will be quite a few questions for this one today. So I'm going to turn the comments off. Let's see. Yeah.
Oh.
And welcome to Jonelle Chats, the next installation. I mean, I don't even know really how this evolved, but I felt like we needed a space that we could learn together in an uplifting way and ask questions and be together and in conversation with some really amazing women and amazing yoga and spiritual practitioners. So for those that don't know me, because I have people that are new to this community, my name is Jonelle. I'm a yoga teacher, spiritual practitioner, mother, and person that really feels deeply that yoga is a practice of social justice as well. So that's me. I have my beautiful sister friend, Dr. Stacie Graham, here today, and I'll give it over to Stacie to tell you a little bit more about her.
Hi, Jonelle. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is Stacie. My pronouns are she and her, and I am things. I don't know. I do a lot of things. I wear a lot of hats. I am a leadership consultant and DEI specialist. I am a yoga and mindfulness practitioner. I love to train yoga teachers.
And can we tell people what D&I is, because they might not know?
Yes, I was going to get to it. Yes, ma'am. Diversity, equity, and inclusion specialist. And my whole life I have had to work through these themes. So I just wanted to mention that right off the bat. I know we'll have people joining us later who might not hear this part, but I can imagine that people are tuning in from both sides of the pond and are coming to a conversation where we can expect, if this is new to them, that resistance will rise within them. And they might look at these two faces and hear these accents and assume, okay, one form of resistance may be, okay, so those are two Black women with North American accents. What does that have to do with me? So Jonelle, can I just have you say how long you lived outside of the United States?
Oh, I lived in London for 20 years up until very recently. And it's I mean, I left, but it wasn't because I was running away. I lived there very happily, and I would consider I lived in the UK longer than I lived in my place of birth. So quite some time. So yeah, I know a little bit about the UK and Europe. I would say more than a little.
So similarly, I've lived in the UK for over 2 decades. And I've lived in Europe for over 2 decades, and I
think that your sound is going a little bit funny,
lived, studied, and worked here. It isn't only an American conversation.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, again, to just frame the conversation, we are very much invested in the UK and in Europe as far as, you know, what happens in the yoga and wellness scene. So we're in a really good place to speak about this. She's back, and I'll add her. We're in a really good place to be able to do that. So please don't have too much resistance about the advice that we give and the stories that we'll offer as we go through the conversation. And I think that this one is very important because it's really going to give you a pathway to have more inclusive and welcoming spaces for Black and brown people. And that's really, I think, you know, with this whole Black Lives Matter movement, and when everybody's putting the Black squares in, and that's one way to, you know, participate and to show solidarity. But also, you know, we have to have meaningful action behind these things. And we can't just think that, okay, I threw up my Black square and now my work is done. Hey, I don't know what that is. So I was just framing that about the Black squares going up, and that can't be all. That can't be it on an individual level and on a institutional level, because there were a lot of people that were participating in that. And I recognize that, and I will say it made me feel good to see people doing that. As a Black woman, I really don't want to diminish anyone that did that, because that really meant a lot for me. It's, you know, especially when I knew it was coupled with words of, we've not done enough. We need to really look at where we are and how to do better. So that coupled with those words landed and meant a lot. Some people put it up, and I know in particular, and then I'm just going off piece a little bit, and I'm going to throw it back to you. In particular, L'Oreal. So I don't really get involved with people on Instagram and go on their pages and leave a lot of messages. But L'Oreal put up this Black box, and we know that they really were damaging to Black, brown, trans woman. And it was very performative, because I was just like, where is your apology to this person? How about treat them fairly, have treated them nicely, and then we don't really need this Black box from you. So I think a big thing that came out of it was like, where are the actions behind the boxes, especially for people that have caused harm before and knew they had done it? Okay, how can we get to the other side of that? So I'm going to give it back over to Stacie now, because she really is well versed in doing this work. She helps businesses navigate this landscape, and has a kind of a roadmap to be able to do it. So, and I'll I'm gonna turn the commenting on again now. So when she comes back, I know it. So what we really have been left in a place of is doing where we don't want performative allyship. We want allyship that is meaningful and has action behind it. And a lot of okay, Mercury is going retrograde. Well, there we go. We know all about that one then. And the landscape that we're currently in is a lot of places will recognize that they haven't really had a diversity, inclusion, equity policy in place at all. You know, they might have been doing, you know, marketing and had a couple of Black and brown folks try using data, Stacie, not Wi-Fi. Okay, well, I'm going to see when she comes back in, and we can try to work it from there. Thank you, Yvonne. Okay. And it needs to be a more holistic approach. Okay, are you back?
I'm back, and thank you for all the tips. I actually am. I did try changing to my 4G. I turned the phone off and on.
So it seems fine now.
Let's see if the old-fashioned way works.
Mercury went retrograde. So okay, so now thank you for bearing with us. So Stacie,
I'm just gonna dive right
in her capacity of what she does, has a roadmap of how wellness, yoga places, fitness places. I think anyone, across any business could do this. So this is not particularly to this one business, one industry. I looked at these and I'm like, well, anyone could do this,
right?
If they want to.
Yeah, if they want to. That'd be the, you know, that's the key. So I posted last week about 8 steps that you could take. Of course, it's not only 8 steps, but I put it in 8 steps that businesses can take, yoga studios, yoga training institutes, and other wellness brands. But as Jonelle said, anyone can do these. And I started with resources. Resources, money, time, capacity, all things that feel like we don't have them right now, right? After 3 months of some form of sheltering in place, quarantine, lockdown, businesses are looking to get to reopen in London. I know that some have already reopened in the US, and across Europe, we have varying degrees of lockdown or no more lockdown. And so businesses may feel like, well, this isn't the right time, but at the end of the day, there's never a right time. So now is the right time. Now is the time, because you feel the pressure. You see it in your inbox, you see it on social media, and you're probably scrambling because it's something you've never thought about before. So now is the time to get started. Find the time, find the capacity within you. Offer your employees who will be needing to do training the paid time off for those trainings. And most importantly, hire people with a budget to come in and do this work with you. Please do not rely on your staff members who identify as Black or as people of color to come in to do it for many reasons. One, it's not their job. It's not what it's not the initial agreement they made when they came on board. They certainly don't have the capacity to do that alongside other things. You're not paying them to do that. Also, it's too personal. You can put them in a really horrible position because of power dynamics if they're trying to tell management about their lack of anti-racist understanding. So
I mean, and I just want to quickly interject in with this and say it really plainly. If you are thinking of having a diversity committee and having members of staff that identify as Black and brown, and you aren't paying them to come and participate in that way, that's just not cool. It's not okay. It is, and even more than that, now I can understand having a focus group, right? To say,
sure,
we'd like you to come and we want to hear what you have to say. We want to hear what you have to say. I mean, you have to pay people for their labor, for their effort, for their work. And really, this work has to be done by professionals. You can't just expect the people on your staff, the people that work for you, just because they're Black and brown, to do this work. It has to have an investment. You have to invest in this work if it's meaningful for you, if you really do want to make a change.
Absolutely. In the next step, I talked about metrics. Are you there, Jonelle?
I'm here. I'm here. You go.
Okay.
You tell about the metrics.
I'm just making sure, because you have to speak from time to time so that I know that I'm still connected, because on my end, everything looks fine. So knowing where you are right now. Metrics is literally demographics, age, race, gender, ability, and so forth. It's also things like, do you use religious items as decoration? Do you have a transparent hiring policy for your teachers? Do you see in how you choose who teaches on your yoga teacher trainings, who gets
I think the connection is going again.
outside of working hours?
I know. I'm really sorry. This is pretty frustrating. Okay. Okay, you're back now.
I'm really sorry. I don't really know what the issue is. What to say? I have full bars. Phone off, turned it back on. Can do.
I think we just keep going and see where we get to.
Okay. What did you hear about metrics specifically?
About just across different things, about offering classes outside of classes that are accessible during different times of the day, classes that aren't might not be full price. That's where I think yeah. So that's the last
Okay,
bit I heard.
that's as far as I got, actually. And then what's really important to consider as well is, of course, how these things intersect, right? So there's a confluence of oppression. So we have racism, we have misogyny, we have neoliberalism, we have all. And what it means is my class plays a role, but it plays a role in how it connects to gender. And you can't look at just one of these things, right? Because if we did that, because Black women and women of color are extremely underrepresented, but it's maybe doing well for white women, right? So it's really important when we're looking at metrics that we're not just picking one thing out and another thing out. We're looking at how it all connects, and how we're connecting to the different local communities where we are. We have yoga studios here in London that have opened in historically Black neighborhoods and don't have any Black staff, don't have many Black students. So something's going wrong. And so the metrics are kind of the first step to look at what's going wrong. And then if we move into the third step, which is really important to me, I said commitment. Senior management, whether that's one person or whether that's a whole head office, senior management has to commit. That means they're committing time, they're committing their own time, they're committing to educating themselves, they're committing to this reading list that will take them a lifetime to complete, they're committing to implementing processes for feedback so that people feel comfortable enough to deliver the feedback that they may have never heard before. But it does not mean making amends. It does not mean calling up your Black staff members or your brown staff members, apologizing, or searching for your sins to be absolved. That's not what committing means.
I think that's a really important piece, because I know a lot of people will feel bad and feel terrible, especially when they are, waking up to the reality that there are a whole set of people having a completely different experience than they are on so many levels. And what, this thing about commitment, and we don't need you to be sorry in that way. We need you to step up. That energy, I think I've been running. I run a circle for white yoga teacher allies, and they were all women. I say, stuff like this makes us hang out in our lower vibrations: fear, guilt, shame. And I'm not going to say you can't feel those things. Of course you're going to feel those things with all the stuff that's happening. However, let's not let those things be the motivation for why we're acting, because it's not going to land in the right way. If I know you start to work with that energy and you transmute it, and you're acting from a place of love, where you're like, listen, I'm doing this because, I love this practice. I love people. I think all people should, be able to participate in this way. Then and also we can see it and we can feel it. If because I like this word that you use, scrambling. I have felt this scramble with folks, Yes, please, thank you. I have felt this scramble with people, and it's just like, and I get it. But now is the time where we have to kind of like, all right, take some breaths, use the practice, and start to have a self-introspection about what our motivations are in this moment. Thank you. And really look at those. And it might be coming from fear, guilt, and shame. Look at that and then say, all right, now how can I transmute this and start to act from a place of love? And when I do that, the love turns it into meaningful action.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right. I couldn't have said it better. In the next step, I talked specifically about training, which is, of course, extremely important and is something that comes again later. But this first point of training is, again, specifically for senior management, leadership, stakeholders, your board, decision makers. Those people among themselves need to be trained in anti-racism, unconscious bias, which I put in parentheses, it's not necessarily unconscious, perhaps other forms or other diversity, equity, and inclusion related themes, such as anti-bullying. We know, especially in the yoga world, there's a lot of overt and also very insidious bullying that takes place. And
for everyone.
And so it's important that there's this space that, these stakeholders can have this type of training alone and know that they're not going to be judged by staff for the things that inevitably get said in such trainings, right? And then after they've done that, after they've looked at their metrics and they've had this training and they've, committed, they've started their reading list, then we can go into the processes and see what's most urgent, and obviously create goals together. What will be addressed in what order, what needs addressing immediately, and what we can give a bit more time to. But there will be many themes to look at: eliminating bias in the recruiting and selection process, ensuring that your interviewers are diverse. I think for yoga studios, for example, if you go to an audition, what does the audition look like? Who is at the audition? making judgment calls about how qualified a teacher is or not, ensuring that there's not one type on the short list. So there is research, empirical research that came out that showed in a corporate environment, if there's only one woman on the short list of, let's say, 4 to 5 candidates, she has a 0% chance of being hired.
Wow.
So we can transfer that to other areas, right? If there is one Black woman, if there is one whatever on that short list, it is unlikely that that person will be hired. Extremely unlikely that that person will be hired. And we need to be aware of that. Also, it's going to be about mitigating pay disparities. Many businesses, especially in health and wellness, started small, grew fast, never put anything in place around rewards, have probably never even done like a proper spreadsheet to look. People doing the same job, are they being paid the same?
Yeah.
So it's not just your teachers. It's really talking about, staff members, your front of house, your sales, your marketing, and so forth. In larger organizations, you can use different forms of incentives and include that in your performance management so that their bonus is tied to their progress on your diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. Larger organizations can do that, no problem. Also, eliminating bias in your yoga teacher training curriculum. I worked with the British Wheel of Yoga on a teacher training, the first of its kind. We trained Black women and women of color, and it was spread throughout. I feel like a lot of the time, white people in yoga think a bit narrowly about what inclusive language looks like, but you have to respond to different body types. You have to understand that, for example, let's go with touch, gaining consensual touch in a class. How do we go about doing that? Often people talk about being trauma informed, which is of course extremely important, but it's not only trauma. Maybe I just don't feel like being touched today.
Yeah.
Maybe I have an injury that I don't feel like discussing, but I also don't want to be touched. Maybe I ate garlic for lunch.
Truly, I think it's really, again, and this is, and I know some people might be on here thinking, well, I'm only a yoga teacher. Like, I'm a yoga teacher. I am in this system. I'm teaching classes at different studios. What can I do, and how can I help? And again, in this framework, you can simply say yourself, I've looked at the schedule and it doesn't look like London. It looks like, somewhere where only white people live. And then especially if we're talking about London, some of these big cities in America too, it's like, what does it look like when you go outside? That should be reflected of the clientele. And I know, as a person, as a teacher, as a consumer, you can feed back to these places to say, I think this is great. I know you, I come here, I teach here. This doesn't look diverse or inclusive or equitable. You can give this feedback to the places that you're in relationship with. And I'm not only talking about like actual studios, also websites, magazines, Instagram feeds. They rely on us to consume these things. They should also be aware that we can, give comment on those things. And that's where you can play into that. If you work somewhere and they're running teacher trainings and you look at the faculty and there are no Black and brown people on a yoga teacher training running it, we have to look at that. And that's where we can effectively participate in the system, because I know that I've been around. when there are no Black and brown people on the teacher trainings, there will be no Black and brown people doing the training. That is it. Those are facts. And I don't think that's not fair and that's not equitable. And there are plenty of Black and brown teachers that would happily contribute to these things. We know them, we see them, and we have to be able to hold these spaces, panelists, the experts, people headlining festivals. It's all the same. It's all the same thing. Being aware, looking at it, and feeding back about the people that just aren't there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that also goes back to creating processes where people can offer that feedback, right, without fear of reprisal.
Yeah.
In the next step, I said more training. So this time the training is focusing on staff, and a lot of the time the issue is with yoga studios, gyms, these types of companies. They say, well, we have a quick turnover. Not my problem. So you have done the work with the processes. That is one way that you're embedding it into your culture, but your staff still has to be trained specifically, again, around anti-racism, unconscious bias, and other points that align to the culture that you're trying to create. They have to do the work. And it's really important in the trainings, people who are holding that space, that there's no hand holding. Yeah. So I always say, as a facilitator, there's always a disruptor, always, 100%. It doesn't matter if I'm doing even what I consider to be the simplest workshop, there is always a disruptor. And a disruptor on the anti-racism training is the person who doesn't want to do the work. And I don't allow any hand holding in that situation. We're here to work. And I tell the group that too. You're not here to handhold, you're here to do your work. And the person who wants to disrupt, well, they're just going to have to get on board. I know that sounds hard, but.
Well, I think we're in a position now that there's been enough dilly-dallying. Like, people are just waking up. They're like, oh, I didn't know. And this has been happening to Black and brown people for time. I'm going to use one of the words that my daughter goes, oh, this has been happening for time. And that you are awakening to it now. That means we need you to commit very quickly to these actions and get right down to it. I mean, I'm telling people, I had to tell people on this thing, I said, I got to tell you the bad news. You're late. You're late to looking at these issues. They've been here for years. We're happy you're here now, but it really does mean a full commitment to dismantling these systems of oppression. It can't be like oh, I'm gonna do it when I feel like it thing. That gone are those times. I don't know, where you could kind of be a part-time anti-racist. You have to be a full-time one. That is the ask for every single person in society. That is the big ask.
And that ask leads directly into how the next step, reflect. How do you reflect as an organization, as a culture, as senior management, as the one person who founded the small studio or the small brand? It doesn't matter. How do you reflect? You reflect with a few questions. For example, how well equipped are staff to identify and address interpersonal, institutional, and structural racism in the workplace? How often are staff taking risks and putting aside discomfort to engage in critical conversations? How much does organizational leadership participate in and support conversations about racial equity internally? How did we do on the goals that we set way back when? Let's measure it, at 6 months, at 1 year, at 18 months. How are we doing? And then remembering, more than anything else, impact is important, intention less so.
Okay, can we say that one again? Really, I need the family that is here to hear that and to really hold it and listen, because there's a lot of intention driven yoga, wellness, fitness, very intention based practices. So we need to hear that.
Impact is greater than intention. So you might have the best intentions in the world, but if you are doing harm, that's not the work. You need to seek support, and you need to continue to do the work. Something has gone wrong. And we see that, right? In places that had good intentions, but weren't willing to do the work.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Harm. Extreme harm. So there I feel really great. One more point, go ahead.
One final point. Repeat.
I was gonna ask you for a final point. So you
repeat. That's the final point. Repeat. Those trainings become embedded in the culture. So they're no longer isolated anti-racism events. They're embedded in your onboarding, in your culture day, in your team building work. It's a part of everything that you do. When you interview, the questions you're asking, it's a part of the culture. So the work of, let's put it this way, the work of building and cultivating an equitable and inclusive organizational culture is never done. The work of racial equity is never done.
I think this, for me, in the talks that I've done, this is so important, because especially right now, I know I'm getting approached left, right, and center about participating in things and coming into spaces and doing things. And for me, if you are not engaged in this work, I don't want to come, because what will happen is I'll come into the space and I will be harmed. It will be violent to me. And why? Not because you intended it to be, but because there hasn't been any introspection done on a personal level that can extend out into a institutional and cultural level. So I see all these folks trying to scramble and grab Black and brown folks to come talk on their panel or to be on their feed that have never spoken to us before, right? Mm-hmm. And you're happy that people want to come to the party. You're happy about that. But my question is, I tell people, like, I've looked at your feed. What's your plan?
Right.
What's your plan? What's your plan for this to not just be a tick box exercise? What is your plan to actually include everyone all the time?
All the time.
Everyone all the time. What is your plan? Because my daddy said, if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That's what he would always say to me.
Absolutely. So, and I 100% agree with that. And I know we probably have a few questions, but I just want to make
send your questions in, everyone. Send your questions. Go ahead.
I want to make just a personal example, because, as a Black woman who has seen these movements come and go, I feel reinvigorated by the momentum that we're experiencing right now. But I just want to give an example. I founded Oya Body, Mind, Spirit Retreats in 2016, specifically to serve the well-being, the holistic well-being of Black women and women of color, because I find that those communities are underserved. They're the greatest caretakers, yet no one is taking care of them. And our first weekend retreat, happened to take place on the weekend after all of the videos were coming out of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile being killed by police, right? So this is a place on the countryside outside of London. And I was thinking, almost all of the people who attended were Black women. I think there were two women who identified as women of color. And I thought to myself, oh, well, you know, I'm American. Libby, I'm American. This has probably only been on my newsfeed. Because that's how social media works. And no, it was not that way. Everyone who was in attendance wanted to talk about it.
Yes.
And they knew they could talk about it. There was a space to talk about it without having to explain anything, without having to defend ourselves, without having to, you know, just talk about it. Already, it just literally started with saying their names. And then we all took a deep breath inside.
Yeah.
I guarantee you there are people on this call who might not even know those two names and don't know what we're talking about. And that's the difference, right? Creating space right now. There are companies in the US that are for the very first time letting their employees have a paid holiday tomorrow in celebration of Juneteenth. And
if you don't know what Juneteenth is, you can Google it or come back to my page tomorrow. I'm going to do a post around it. So we have a question. What you do when you don't? What do you do when they don't want to do the work or think they don't need to? Well, thank you, Ayurveda Mama, because that's a good question. What do you do when they don't want to do think they need to?
Right. So again, we have, I would make an assumption here. We have someone who is affected trying to find a route in to people, stakeholders, decision makers, senior management who aren't affected directly. We're all affected, but directly affected. You know, this is tricky. Right now you have an opportunity. There's a window.
Yeah.
Use it. You have leverage. Perhaps you have allies who can take that risk because they need to be taking the risk rather than you. Perhaps you can seek out other ways to communicate that. But that's a really personal question, and I'm always cautious. This question happens often across the spectrum of workshops that I do. And I always tell people, you know, it's up to you the risk that you are willing to take, because only you know the situation you're in. Only you know, how the risk will affect you, the potential of the backlash, whether it's an emotional or financial backlash. I've taken big risks before and I've been punished.
Yeah. I think also, like what Stacie said, it can be very situational, but I'll tell you, some of the tactics now. I talk about people's bottom line. And right now, especially in yoga and wellness, because, you know, in fitness, because of the positionality of this industry, people don't want to look racist. They do not want to. And I think in my heart, I would like to believe they don't want to be racist, but they sure don't want to look it. And so you can start the conversation in that way. I think Stacie is very right. If you can get some allies together and get a group of people to present this, there's always strength in numbers, because if you do it as on your own as a person, and I've had this happen, you can get gaslit. You know, they'll just start saying all sorts of things that just aren't right or aren't okay. But I think that there's always safety in numbers and, you know, reaching out to different people. And I think right now we can, because it's so in the open, these conversations, we kind of have a sense of who's okay and who's not okay. Mm-hmm. And if that can give you any comfort, and you know, me and Stacie are here for it. I'm gonna tell you that for sure. I'm here for it. Okay, hold on. I can't see the, I live in the middle of the UK countryside. I was often the only woman in yoga women of color in my yoga classes. I can't see the rest of the question. This is so not all right. Can you finish? I can only see now.
I see the L and then dot, dot, dot.
And now I'm the always the only, and then dot, dot, dot. If you can tell us the rest of the question, then we'll answer it. But in the meantime, Tawny's asked us, can we speak about the cost of teacher trainings and how this might exclude POC from even becoming certified?
Sure. So that that may have gotten lost in. Can we take the question away?
Oh gosh, I am sorry.
I don't know how to do that, but I think it might be covering me. It doesn't matter. So that is actually, I created a tool. It's just an Excel spreadsheet that yoga studios. It's fine. So in this spreadsheet, like I said, it's not limited to demographics. It does include demographics like race and so on and so on. But it also looks at these types of details. And one of those details is, do you offer scholarships for teacher training? And beyond that, I personally take major issue with the amount that is charged. It is very clear that it is an elitist clique of people who can train if your training costs half of what a tuition fee costs to study at a university in this country, right? So let's be real about that. It's very hard to have a conversation around those types of things if you are the person who's seeking the training or the person who works at an equity inclusion consultant is talking to them about. Numbers are always at the top. But I absolutely agree with you, Tana. Yes, it's exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, I also, you look at like the conditions of it, and I was lucky enough that I did go away to India for a month to do my teacher training, but I literally was the only Black person there, the only Black person, the only like woman of color, like what, and not a lot of Black and brown people, because of socioeconomic conditions, could afford to take a month off to go and do something like that. And it is very apparent when you see the trainings, who's coming and who's not coming. And that, I think, the cost is definitely one. And I even know that and I was very, very, very shocked. There are a lot of the studios, they will have scholarships for things, but they weren't getting to the Black and brown people. They were like getting to, whoever. And that is, that's not gonna ever be helpful as a yoga studio or a gym or fitness or a place. When you're offering things, you do really need to look and hold who needs this, who needs the representation.
Right.
So let me go back into the questions because there's another one. Okay, all right, again. Are there resources for us to find inclusive spaces? That is what Anna was asking. Are there resources for us to find inclusive spaces? And I know of one. There is one that I saw that is the Yoga Green Book. And that's a website that is
so Yoga Green Book has been around for years. I know the founder, or we found each other early in both of us founded our projects around the same time. And it's basically, your online yoga platform with Black and brown teachers. First and foremost, that's what they started out. So you can go in, you can find a practice, a time, you know, you pay your subscription and you can do the workouts, but do the practices, but she recently posted and asked, you know, for a listing to put together this resource of, and she did mean for it. I think she's back now based in the US, but she did mean for it to be an international resource. I personally don't know of one for the UK at this time.
We do have a community in the UK of yogis of color.
Sure.
And that's for anybody. It's not just yoga teachers. It literally means yogis of color. And I found that as an incredible resource. So if you, and this is a thing, if you need some resource, you need a teacher in a certain area, get in touch, and I can put it to the group, and we can get you that information. And we're also, again, in a process of trying to find out what is of service, what will be of service to yogis of color and people that do want to maybe have a different sort of experience with their yoga and spiritual practices. Stacie's organization, Oya Retreats, always hosts different things, and right now we're all in virtual space. So there's a smorgasbord of teachers out and offering things. If you find it useful, I'll dedicate my stories to all the wonderful teachers that I know. I'll do that. I'm happy to do that. All the wonderful black and brown and yellow teachers that I know that are here, that are serving. I would be my pleasure and honor to amplify their voices so people can know them and practice with them. So I think there's maybe space for one more. Can you expand on your British Wheel, your experience with the British Wheel of Yoga? Were you given the support, and how was this received? So I'll leave that for you, Stacie, to answer.
Ooh, so this is recorded, right?
As quick as you can.
No, it's going to be quick. Let me put it this way. What we did was wonderful. On the Oya Retreats IG profile, you can find 6 videos of 6 of the students saying why they chose to do this particular training. We subsidized it for all of our students, which meant we just took a pay cut because it was that important to us, so that it would be affordable. It was all Black women and women of color. We had women of varying faiths, which was beautiful. We had women who were pregnant. It was exactly what you want for that situation. The person from the British Wheel of Yoga who was the lead tutor on that was the former chair of the British Wheel of Yoga, who was very dedicated to opening up a very older, white, middle-class organization for the chair. But it was a great experience, but it was a punk.
Okay, so we're gonna just
experience that will continue in that way.
So you can find Stacie on Oya Retreats. That's her Instagram platform, and get in touch with her there about the work that she does. Anywhere else folks can get in touch with you, Stacie, because I'm conscious of time?
Just with an IE, staciecccgraham.com.
Okay. Thank you so much, sister. I love you so much. I got the IG people telling me the time remaining. So if you have questions, get in touch with me, get in touch with Stacie, especially if you work in spaces that you know need diversity, inclusivity, and equity. Get in touch, please, because she's here for that. And I'll be offering more resources on my IG Live. This will be saved on my IGTV. I love to hear from you all. Let me know what you want to talk about next, because I don't know. It's up in the air. So let me know what you want to talk about, family, and that's what we will do. I love you all. Stay safe. Stay blessed. Stacie, thank you. I bow to your lotus feet.
Thank you. Love you.
Take care, everyone.